Hello and welcome to our birthday comic book stash show. And what a more fitting way to round out year one than finish the mega saga that we started all the way back at the
In
beginning.
1972.
Which surprisingly, we managed to do this and get this to be the one for this week without actually
Yeah,
planning it.
yeah. I'll refer to it as a present to you guys, but I'll be honest, I think it's more of a present to us to have done this. And it's a shame, isn't it? Because like we love talking about comics, and generally we talk about comics we love. And I think we'll get into it. I don't think this is necessarily a bitter hatred affair rather than anything else, but it has not quite been the knockout the park that we thought it was going to be when we started this endeavor.
Yes,
Well,
it
and
is.
other stuff we've done with Love More. Let's be honest. I
Yeah.
think that's the truth, isn't it? Like along the way, there's lots of morsels that we've done, which you can see obviously in the back catalogue of the shows, but even things that are continuing stories that we're working through that I think we've just found a whole lot more love for that I think we wish we'd started first.
Yes. But before we go into Knightsend and the saga as a whole, should we get to our reading corners?
Our birthday reading corners. Yes, let's do
Woohoo!
that.
Happiness is just around the corner.
Well, I've been following your reading endeavours on Twitter, and so I'm quite intrigued to see which ones you're going to pull out the pile to talk about today.
So I'm bringing two with me today.
Two?
Yes, and both of Batman runs. The first is a 3-part slash an extra one as a special one shot afterwards. Joker, Killer Smile
This is the one
slash
I'm
Batman
really interested in
Smile
hearing
Killer.
about
Yeah,
because it's on my list because it's Jeff Lemire written, isn't it? And I think it's
yeah.
Andrea Sorrentino art, and I love them as a pair. I love everything I've ever read of Jeff Lemire's, but I decided to go right away back to the start, the first thing that Jeff Lemire ever wrote, and I'm working my way through chronologically. So I'm a way off of this, but yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
interested to hear about this one.
Yeah, so this I only found this was because obviously you clicked on it because it was
Yeah,
in
yeah, I
the
was
started reading bit on our shared
for those that
accounts.
use DC Ultra, or probably works the same with Marvel Unlimited as well. I went on there to add it to the list, and I clicked open the issue instead. And I was like, no, how do I get back to the beginning bit? And yeah, then it kind of shows the started. But
Yeah, because it was one of those if I'd never seen it and went, "Oh, hello,
yeah, yeah,
this stinks of me," and yes, it does stink of me. This is horrible in a good way.
yeah.
This
This
is
is disgusting. I love it.
yeah, it is fucking dark as fuck. It shows Joker as a right manipulative cunt.
Which is what I'm hoping from it because that is what he is, isn't he? Like
Yeah,
that's the Joker that I say I want to see, but I think the world should see because that's what he is.
yeah. In a way, it is a retelling of what he does with Harley in the mind fucking
Okay, yeah.
thing, but it's a different Doctor and it's a completely different thing. I'm not going to go too much into what happens because you're going to read it anyway at some point, and
Yeah.
it needs to be experienced. But it plays on mental illness, it plays on Stockholm syndrome, it plays on character sort of breaking of like mentally yeah,
I
it
guess
is.
destroying, like tearing
Yeah,
someone down.
yeah, it is dark as fuck, and there are moments in here that make it even worse for how dark and sinister it is when you see Mr. Smiles, who is think Saturday morning cartoon little puppet character
Mr.
of
Socko.
a bit like Socko, but
Yeah.
who is a cutesy version of Joker. And in one of the bits that's in the Batman one hit, they go, "Oh, you need to draw yourself a character." I don't like that character, takes the scissors and stick them in your eye.
Okay. Well, one of the things I wondered is, so Jeff Lemire, I've read a lot, but nowhere near. I reckon I've read about 25% of the stuff he's done because he's very prolific, and as I say, so far, really not hit anything that I've not liked. In fact, we talked about Hawkeye a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
The next Hawkeye series is written by Jeff Lemire, and so that one's kind of on my list, but again, doesn't fit with my chronological order. But it's strange because the one that pings into my mind the most when I hear Jeff Lemire is Sweet Tooth. I absolutely loved Sweet Tooth, and what I would, if I was forced with my arm up my back to describe what I think of as Jeff Lemire as a writer, I think I'd instantaneously go to he tells sort of great dark but heartfelt parables, almost Grimm's fairy tale type thing. But there is a key word in there, dark, and I think that's what I was really interested to see on this is that how dark he goes. And you know, he's in everything I've ever read of his, maybe apart from some of the more mainstream Marvel, because he has done a few bits here and there. I would say that he always leans into the characters and the psychology of the characters and doesn't sort of shy away from tough topics and doesn't shy away from making you as the reader feel upset, angry, all the way up to kind of in love and, you know, all the emotional gamut. And I think that's where his talents really lie as a writer is not only does he craft very interesting stories, but he understands how to emotionally connect with an audience with what he's writing.
Yeah, as I said, this is fucking dark, and I'm glad I read it now and not when it came out, because it came out in 2020 during the midst of the end times.
Maybe that was part of the prompts. Maybe he was exercising some of his own demons in writing this.
Yeah, I mean, then that would have probably hit even worse and been a much more depressing read.
Yeah.
Then, but yeah, definitely not for kids. It's one of those of if I see it at a reasonable price in hardback, I will pick it up. Hopefully, if it's also got the Batman one hit as part of the collection.
And you'd hope, wouldn't you? You'd hope that they'd put the lot together. But then I
Yeah.
guess hope and company trying to make as much money as they can are often two different things, aren't they?
Yeah, but it said it's one of those of I would definitely want to have it in my house because it's so fucking pretty.
Cool.
But yeah, it would never I wouldn't be letting the boy look at it. Put it that way.
Top shelf
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. No, again, I'm really pleased. I'm really pleased that you rated it because I have high hopes for it and I will get to it at some point.
Yeah, and that was thanks to having my laptop die at work. Meant that I had a day of crappy bits and bits.
Up
Sat in
yours,
the-
work. Up yours, laptops.
Sat there reading that, and also another thing that I didn't know existed, which has annoyed me because it's from like 1999, and I loved the first version. The follow-up to Long Halloween, Batman Dark Victory, smashed through this as well really quickly. Carries on with the same style of art that Long Halloween has, which is one of those with Long Halloween. The reason it hit me so much when I first read it is how it looks so different to other Batman stuff, especially at the time.
Even generationally, like it looks so different to anything anyone else was producing at that point, didn't it? Artistically, it leans very much back into a bygone era, but with a very modern style to it, doesn't it? You know, like it's not like they're going, oh, I'll just chuck in a 1950s page. It is a beautiful, beautifully rendered, clearly well thought out panel by panel rendition. But yeah, big fan of the art for both series.
And again, takes in that same way of storytelling that they did in Long Halloween, and also did in the what was the Superman one I did recently?
For All Seasons.
Oh, For All Seasons, yeah. Which is they did where it is around holidays again, but it's like Christmas, Thanksgiving, April Fool's, stuff like that. I fucking loved it. I literally, I was just went straight through it really quickly because I was just like every issue was like, oh, but I
Yeah.
want more, I want more. Um,
When I
it
read them, I
is,
read them back to back. I got it was after they'd both been published, and I got funny enough, it was at a time where I actually used a library every now and again, and they had Long Halloween as a collected in there, so I got that. I think I got that one day, read it, and then the next day I was back down there going, what else have they got by these guys? And then Dark Victory was there on the shelf, so I picked that up, and I think I read that like straight afterwards. And I don't know. I've got no other way of telling other than the back-to-back read, but I think the back-to-back read really, really helped it as well because you're totally kind of in that universe and in that mindset.
yeah, because it does follow on from the Holiday Killings, which is
Yeah,
Long Halloween, and it just takes those characters further into the journey, and it's how they introduce Robin in, and how like Two-Face gets all the other villains to work with him for his own benefits, but their benefits as well, is stunning. And the covers, because obviously I was reading it off DC, so I did the individual issues, not the collective.
yeah.
Each of the covers are fucking amazing.
I can't remember. I'm sure there was something about that you could put them all together for a panoramic view or something like that, or that might have been another one of their series. But it's a long time ago, so I'm drawing back to reading Wizard magazine in the '90s to try and remember that those potential facts.
But yeah, it is one of those. Whenever I see those two on something, I jump on it. It's just one of those. I genuinely didn't know this existed, and it just. I think it was one of those. It was in the when you scroll down of the new ultras, they had it as a omnibus
Yeah.
on there as an ultra.
Yeah, it's quite nice, isn't it? On Ultra now, you're getting them kind of flagging or highlighting to you, or they're adding the omnibus, and it makes you kind of go, "Oh, there's a story I meant to read, or there's a story I didn't know about."
So yeah, so jumped into that and very happy.
So
But
I've not read Superman for all seasons, as I say, it's on the list. But do you at some point in the future want to do them and Marvel?
yes,
Because they do Daredevil yellow, Hulk grey, Spider Man blue, and Captain America white, I think. So they do 4 limited series in the Marvel universe. So all written after this. I think they, for whatever reason, they leave DC and go to Marvel to do their wares for a little while. And I don't know. I've never read them. I don't know whether they're any good or not. But yeah, I'd be down for reading that as a. We could do like a Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale special extravaganza at some point in the future. And all on Marvel Unlimited, I
best.
believe.
Um,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
yeah,
they're all on Marvel Unlimited. But if not, we can look and find out. If not,
yes. So what have you been up to?
so speaking of that, there Daredevil, and I guess oft compared to the Batman equivalency, I started, and I want to say the latest one of Daredevil, but that's a lie. Actually, there is an even more recent series by the same writer, Chip Zdarsky, but it's when he first comes on to Daredevil. So I think we're going back about 3-4 years of publication, and there's a few Daredevil runs I haven't read. The one before this, written by Charles Soule, is supposed to be very, very good, and I hadn't read it. So in my head, I'd said, well, I'll read that first, and I'll get to this. But I just kept just seeing over and over again how good this Chip Zdarsky run is supposed to be. I've been reading a bit of his stuff at Marvel with Howard the Duck. I know that he's taken over Batman, so I was like, oh, come on, I can't hold it off any longer. And partially, I think I was a little bit reticent to go into it because when you hear so much good about something, you think, will it be that good? Will it be that good? It had me convinced within 2 pages. So I read the first trade, which is called No Fear, which is issues 1 to 5, and yeah, you start off with Matt Murdock meeting a girl in a bar and them effectively hooking up. And when you read a writer and you just go, yeah, they get human beings and they know how to present a human being having a conversation, even though they're a superhero or a lawyer in his case. it doesn't lose pace after that either. We are reintroduced, I guess, or certainly for me, a big reintroduction to what's going on in Matt Murdock's life, and it covers a lot of what happens in the Charles Soule series very, very quickly. But you're getting Matt Murdock in a bad position. He is, as Daredevil's want, taken one hell of a beating, possibly even died along the way, but he's not in the best nick. Kingpin is now the mayor of New York and is trying to, let's say, abolish all superheroes. And of course, he's got a lot of history with Daredevil, so he crops up within this first bit. But you see Daredevil on his own. You know, he's not reconnected with Foggy, and partly I think because of a bit of shame about taking up the Daredevil mantle again. But he's not the Daredevil we know and love. He's a Daredevil who is in a, as I say, in a bad way, and he's relearning how to do what he used to do. So you see him kind of slip on rooftops, and when he's fighting low-level goons, the fights are much harder than they've ever been before. And
Yeah.
when he takes a kicking, he takes a kicking. You know, like he really is being damaged. But the main premise for this first trade, No Fear, is during one of those fights, one of the goons gets killed. And you then follow the story as to Daredevil investigating how they were killed, i.e. post-fight, who did this goon in to make him look bad. I won't go into much more of what it does because I think you'll really, really enjoy it. The only other thing I will say about it, storyline wise, is it also has the Punisher in it, and like old school Punisher. So I know we're both
Yeah.
really liking this Jason Aaron run, but very much the Punisher. We know more than anything else. He insinuates himself into the story, and him and Daredevil have quite the conversation about what it is to be a hero, what it is to be a hero that kills. And yeah, I think it's amazing. Specifically, though, one of the things I did want to call out outside of the story is the art. The art on this is absolutely beautiful. It's Marco Cicchetto, I believe it's pronounced. I think it's the first thing I've ever seen of his. If it isn't, I certainly don't remember it. But every page, every panel, absolutely gorgeous. This guy is gorgeous in that when human beings are standing in a room wearing a suit or at a
Yeah.
bar, they look like human beings standing at a suit wearing a suit at a bar. But when the superhero stuff happens, it looks like human beings being superheroes. And when
Okay.
violence happens, you kind of feel the pain that they're doing. But yeah, he absolutely 100% knocked my socks off on this. But I can't. I know it's only one trade in, but I can't recommend this highly enough. Daredevil has some amazing runs through history, and I can't. If this first trade's anything to go by, this is going to be an absolutely another amazing run on Daredevil.
Cool. Because I am after the Batman run that I've just done with long Dark Victory and obviously Knightsend and stuff. I am purposely going into Marvel for a bit more
Yeah.
for the next sort of month or so. Obviously, I've started a run which I'll talk about next week because I want to finish it before
Oh
I
yeah,
bring it
yeah,
up.
yeah. I know that one. Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously once that because I think that because I've read all the first part of it, I've got the second part of like 7 8 issues to read. Then once that's done, I'll then look at something else. But I think I am going to marvel it a little bit more
Yeah.
this month.
Well,
So that Daredevil runs is up my alley because
to the most part, like I can't think of a time where probably like the last 7 to 8 creative teams that have been on Daredevil, possibly even longer than that, where I haven't heard brilliant stuff about it. So he does seem to be a character that really is conducive to creators coming on and creating some of their best stuff.
yeah
But I guess for context, not in no way, shape or form like in storyline, but for context, I felt the same about this as when I read that first trade of Immortal Hulk. It's a kind of that kind of high level of quality for me.
yeah. So yeah, I as I said, I am definitely doing some more Marvel this month. So yeah, that'll be in the pantheon of things to jump into.
Yes.
Do you
Spirits.
have anything else, Mr. Seddon?
No, I don't want to muddy the waters of something that I think is absolutely amazing with doing anything else.
So we shall get into the end of the saga as we are at the night's end.
The Knights, and where did we leave off? I'm trying to remember.
So
Effectively, Bruce had come back, hadn't he?
Bruce was back. The version that I had was different to the one that you had because
Oh yeah, you didn't see how he come back, did you?
yeah, I didn't see how he came
Weird.
back. He was just there
Yeah.
because I was reading the actual physical book version and you were reading the digital ones.
I said to you, I didn't think it was a particularly good story how he come back, but it is. I can't imagine how weird that must have been to kind of go, well, Bruce is back. What happened? Last time I saw him, he was in a wheelchair with a broken back. But okay, he's back.
And Azrael was obviously having his issues with St. Demas and still trying to
Yeah.
find who killed his daddy. In the
Yeah, his general issues, as I now to think of it, like The boy's a complex, not so complex character, is he? Like I hate the world. I'm gonna kill everyone. Everyone's all right. That's pretty much the two sides of the coin for that boy.
yeah. Murder, murder, murder. I am bat metal. Murder, murder,
Yeah,
murder. So we start this one seeing Bruce doing some training.
I was gonna say, I think it's worth
Lady
saying.
Shiv.
I believe this is the shortest of all the parts, isn't it? Like from issue count, I think this one
Yeah.
comes in lower than every other one. So Knightsend, and strange enough, I think not only is it the shortest one in the amount of issues, but this was actually published over about 2 months. So all of the issues contained in this were just about 2 months worth of publication history. So
Yeah, because
I wonder whether they were rushing to the end of this at this point.
yeah, I think might have been. So Lady Shiva is there to train Bruce back.
Yeah, he very much kind of indicates, doesn't he, towards the end of the last one, of going, right, I am back, but I've kind of been through some bad stuff, and if I'm going to do Batman things, or at the very least, if I'm going to go toe to toe with Jean Paul, I do need to get my mojo back, and that would involve a training, and not just a training montage.
Oh no. So as a way for Bruce to be trained, she goes out and kills the no-armed master in the is it Keiju mask, the bat mask that she was wearing.
It becomes a kind of, I guess, supposed to be important plot point. This bat mask, although
Yes.
yeah.
She then gives the mask to Bruce for while he's training, and now they're all after Bruce because all of his students want to
Get revenge on the
Get
bat
revenge.
masked murderer.
Yes.
I quite liked. I'm going to go with, like, as we go through this, I want to kind of accentuate some positives, and I quite liked the concept. I quite like the idea of, if Bruce is going to go to, in this case, like a quite vicious but well-skilled martial artist to try and get his training back up, and someone who is being established as dark on the dark side of the things. I quite like the fact that they had a dark side of things plan, and it wasn't just, oh yeah, I'll train you. It was a bit like, oh yeah, I'll train you, but that training is going to be, I'm going to kill someone, and then they're all going to come after you. Good luck. Stroke PS, please kill them because I want you to go fully dark.
Yeah, it's very much a if you want to be the Batman again, you need to be able to fight, and there's no point in being in a classroom fighting.
Yeah.
Fight on the streets with fucking ninjas. Go.
Yeah. What did we think of? And I know we'll get into them more as we go through, but what did we think of our cadre of ninjas that Bruce was ultimately going to have to go against?
They were a little bit characterless.
Yeah, that's kind of where I went into.
They were very villain of the week level. Oh, here's the big strong one. Here's the quick one. Here's the one that can
Here's
hear.
the one with cunning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the weapons master, and I guess because they were like a group of ninjas. If like our kind of education on ninjas through movies, etc., is that generally quite a generic look to them, and they don't tend to have colourful costumes nor necessarily be massively distinguishable from each other. But I thought for something that was going to, as we find out, play such a kind of big role over the next X amount of issues. Yeah, I think they probably could have done with a little bit more distinction. And also, I don't know whether any of these come back at any point. Um, but they didn't feel like characters that I was waiting to like at the end of this story. I wasn't kind of going, "Oh, brilliant! I hope they come back one day."
Yeah, of it said they very much were generic goons of the week. Of
Yeah, yeah,
oh look, we've got some ninjas.
yeah,
It furthers the story. It makes sense for what is needed to be done.
yeah.
But I never expect to see any of these guys again.
No, no, I don't think we're going to get a multi-faceted limited series exploring all of their characteristics off the back of this, are we?
No. We see that Jean Paul is still a dick and is still having
Yes.
issues with Saint Damias.
Yeah.
Again, it's still that thing where I look at Saint Damias and I'm like, why do they do that pink and on yellow orangey sort of thing for him? And it's just, I just can't take any of it seriously when you look at it because it looks so
But
out
considering
of
how
place.
much it's been part of the, and certainly the Knight's Quest part
Yeah,
of it, um, it still feels very thin to me.
I still
Like,
don't care.
yeah, and
That's the thing.
maybe it's because we didn't read like the Azrael series beforehand, and maybe I'd have bought into it a bit more with that. But yeah, I feel like there's probably somewhere in there a really interesting concept of this religious sect that has gone bad to a degree and kind of pre-programs people in a family lineage to further it, the plans and the plots and the ploys of the religious order. But considering how much it's been seen, yeah, it became an annoyance to me more than anything else. I know you really don't like that visual. I'm doing that because like, it would be up there.
Yeah.
If there's something behind me right now in pink and yellow, then I've lost it as well. But yeah, I think all the way through this, it just got annoying rather than me feeling like this was something with gravitas. It just felt like like it was a plot device that they just didn't establish well enough, nor then follow through on well enough for me.
Yeah, and it's just one of those. It just generally doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, and godlike, and maybe it does after this. Maybe in future storylines they really do, but this felt like the time to make it go somewhere, didn't it? Like it was like
Yeah,
why, like this is this dude's story, and he's become Batman, so you clearly think he's important, and this is gonna be his internal conflict, and make that internal conflict. I was gonna say more interesting, but make it feel like it's more impactful, other than him shouting at a disembodied big head,
yeah.
almost like Grandpa Simpson shouting at the clouds. Yeah,
But we see that Nightwing is here, and,
yeah, my
and
boy.
he too is a bit of a dick.
They do portray him a bit dickish in this, don't they? I don't. I'd read a lot of Teen Titans, and I can't. I think most of the Teen Titans run, or most of the ones that have him as a featured character, has kind of ended at this point
Hmm.
in continuity. But yeah, he seems, and I think he might even have his own solo at this point. But he seems a little bit more. I think Dick's. I think you hit the nail right on the head. He seems a little bit more of a dick than I expect Dick to be.
Yeah. Um, Him and Robin team up to go and try and get to Bruce because they know Bruce is up to something, but they don't know what.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And they find Bruce as he has appeared to kill one of the ninjas with the
yes.
sacred special ninja move, the Three Fingers of Death, insta kill, spinal removal technique.
Kind of ruined
Or
Kill Bill a little bit for me. This did made Kill Bill seem a bit less cool.
um, we find out that he didn't actually kill them because
No,
Bruce is Bruce, and Bruce would never kill anyone. He
no, he's a
pulled
nice
it
boy,
just
really.
enough that it would temporarily put them down and incapacitate them, but not kill. At this point, Shiva says her work is done because Shiva believes that Bruce has killed the final ninja and takes back the Tenga mask and leaves our story.
Bye.
So
She's
before
someone who
we,
I wouldn't mind seeing come
I
back.
was going to say before we go further, should
Yeah.
we discuss her as a character and a plot point in this?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think she got like massive amounts. You know, it is very kind of '90s generic delivery of it, of kind of going, she is bad. This is where she is bad. She's trying to make Bruce do bad things, but even in that, I felt like she had enough interest to her. There was intrigue for me around. Horrible way of saying it, but I kind of wanted to see her in a better writer's hands. I
Yeah,
think like a lot could be done with her as a character and her as a concept.
yeah. It said the because I thought at first it was good. They were going to sort of be sort of like Talia vibes, and she'd be connected to Raj or something
Yeah,
like that. Um, but I would definitely be intrigued to have her come back as a character, and you know, because there's clearly history there. Because we don't see it, but it comes across as there's history of that she knows about Bruce and knows that Bruce is Batman, and
yeah.
knows the levels of training that he needs to have.
I think it's fair to say as well. I haven't read any more of this character since. I do think she appears again, but I just it's not been any of the issues I've read. But I think you're spot on with the Al Ghul. I thought very much in that wheelhouse. So and that's an area of Batman that I really like. I really like the shadowy ninja killer assassination group, very much like Daredevil in the Hand, I guess. But yeah, I like that element in Batman. So happy to see her return whenever I get to a run where she returns.
Yeah, I definitely think that as a character and a plot point, it was needed, and with especially with this one because of how quickly it bangs through stuff, it was the right length of her being in the story for what happens for the rest of this book. I would have much rather had more of her in the last book and had less of the thingy stuff, and haven't maybe have Bruce out of Gotham in the mountains in Tibet or something with her training to then come back would have been like something they could have done and made it longer.
I think
But
kind of as we go through this whole story and when we kind of recap everything, I think you're spot on with something there of going. Um, Pacing is somewhat an issue throughout this, isn't it? And where certain plot points happen, I keep coming back to going. I feel like there's a better story within this, even with all of the story elements they have. If you just, I don't know, if an editor had come along beforehand and kind of recut this movie and put it in a different order, yeah, there's something better there.
yeah, but yeah, I definitely would see more of her. So Bruce puts back on the suit and is back as good Batman in a very old school looking way as well. It's very sort of 80s looking Batman in that suit. Um, I
I
think it
meant,
was done
I meant
to
to say
look
sorry.
differently.
Sorry, I meant to pick up on something you said there as well. You sort of said about how quickly it went through. I didn't feel this part was quick. I felt it dragged. Like the 5 issues, maybe even 6. I can't remember that it took to kind of get to the end of this. And not saying that 6 issues is a lot, but for what they achieved, which is pretty much just Batman fighting villain of the week, jumping on some logs to kind of get to this week plan of going, I'll make it look like I killed someone. I think I was expecting maybe ultimately a him Shiva confrontation, but a proper him Shiva confrontation of going, no, look, I'm not going to do the bad thing you want me to do. But yeah, it wasn't a lot of issues, but it felt like a lot of issues to me. This part of the story.
So I think because of how much dragged in the last one, something
Yeah,
that
maybe.
just goes over 5 issues isn't as bad. But
Yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
just
Comparatively, that's a dream, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And maybe it was because of the generic nature of the people that he was fighting and the situations he was in. Maybe that's why it felt a little bit dragged. And I will say, as a contrast, I guess, to what I just said, is as much as that felt like a bit of a stretch of time to get to the end point of it. Also, by the same token, I was at the end of this bit going, you didn't do a lot of training, did you? You know, you did come back from a broken back, say that you can't really do much. And they had like this big plot point, didn't they, of him being unwilling to jump off the roof of the building because he didn't trust
yeah,
his body anymore. Um, but for someone who apparently has lost all confidence, he does take care of him quite easily on the whole, doesn't he?
yeah.
And this does come quite easy. Although, as I say, I didn't want 30 issues of him getting back in because, but yeah, I don't know. Again, pacing all over the place, and yeah, it was too long, but also too short at the same time.
So yeah, so Bruce has said it's back in the back suit, and has said very 80s looking with the more grey and blues.
It was nice to see. I really like that. I really
Yeah,
like that visual. I think because we'd seen such a horrible bat outfit for so many issues, it was so nice to see something a bit more traditional.
yeah. Um, we then see a whole array of Jean Paul fighting robot mech suited bad guys, blowing up arms dealers and finding the Queen of St. Dimias.
Dumas, yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, like I don't know whether this is harking back to the limited series, but yes, all of a sudden this really important coin that might indicate that the person who killed his dad was still alive become. I felt like it become a plot point out of thin air, and because of that, again, I found it quite hard to get really invested in it. All of a sudden, it's like, my father's killer is alive. I will find my father's killer, and I did kind of think to myself, well, it's just a coin, mate. Like, and
Yeah.
everyone says he was dead. And if you had any doubts that he was dead before, why haven't you been spending all this time trying to find him anyway? But yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
a weak premise, I think. Again,
yeah. We then have our first fight between Batman and Batmetal. Batmetal does get the win here.
it's we'll pick up Bright as an artist at the end, but I do want to say I hated the cover for this issue. It's Batman 510, and for this, I guess, being, and again, round one of their confrontation, oh, it's just an awful cover. It's absolutely grotesque. Batman with the world's longest bat ears ever, and it's just a mess of blue and black with just a green background. I don't know. It was egregiously bad for, I think, for the prominence it should have as an issue.
Yeah. We then see Catwoman come back as she randomly, because I'd completely forgot about this, was trying to get the uh, controller for the nanobot technology for
Yeah,
the
which
the spinal guy.
which I presume in that interim, because there are interim issues that aren't included of Catwoman. I presume that is a plot point in the Catwoman ongoing. So yeah, that one didn't feel as bad. I could kind of forgive that because I felt like that was actually continuing another part of the story that we hadn't been as closely following.
Yeah, so I remember her there being the thing that she had a friend that was hurt and she had to go
Yeah,
and do something, but then she just randomly comes back involved in this because the guy that they're going after has the bit. So we then have a team up between Robin, Nightwing, and Catwoman as they go through a array of goons as they fight their way to the top of the
it's a goon party.
plaza. Very, very reminiscent of like Die Hard. This to me, it
Yes,
was
yeah,
bad guys on the roof waiting for their chopper. We have to start at level 1 and fight our way to the top.
They were tapping into, well, I feel like as creators what they were trying to tap into was something very exciting, wasn't it? I think they were going, this will be visually stunning. Unfortunately, I just don't think they had artists that could make this look as visually stunning as it probably was in their head. The
Yeah,
set pieces kind of fell very flat for me, as it was very grey, very bland backgrounds. But yeah, I mean, I know it comes later, but you know, this is the raid, isn't it? Or this
yeah.
is when Judge Dredd copied the raid. But in no way done as good as either of those things.
No. We then get our massive set piece for the run, the helicopter bridge battle between Batman, Batmetal, Goons, Robin, Nightwing,
Nightwing,
Catwoman,
yeah,
and a machine gun. And I was like, oh, we get something massive. And it just didn't look pretty. It was one of those of this sort of a big set piece would be amazing as a cartoon, be amazing as a film.
yeah,
It
yeah.
just didn't do so well with how they
Not
put it on the page.
not to sort of keep harking back to the same things over and over again, but we talked at quite a lot of length, didn't we, in the first volume that we did of Hawkeye, and we talked about that car chase and how to make something that is a movie action scene into something even better on a page. And this feels almost diametrically opposite to that. This feels like someone really, and I said earlier, I don't think the artist had the talent, and I think some of the artists in this run do go on to do some decent stuff. And I'll caveat all of this with going, God, they can draw better than me. I can barely draw a stick man, but um, yeah, even if they tried really hard, they just didn't get there. And yeah, like so many things we're talking about in this run, it just made it feel a bit flat as the centerpiece, I guess.
And so it was one of those of I really liked the idea.
Yeah,
The idea was perfect. Big set piece, everyone involved, everyone in a massive scrap, big issues. It just didn't live up to what they were planning on
yeah,
it. Coming out of this though, we get red bat metal because that's to show that he's evil now.
yeah,
And we also find out that he has put bombs in the Batmobile that if anyone tries to tamper with it, it will explode. Remember this. Because the very next issue, Bruce tries to get into the Batmobile through his anti tamper device that he had in his Batmobile.
yeah.
And it does what? Goes boom.
Bruce is dead. That's how the story ends. Right, end of the show. Thanks. It's been lovely. See you next year.
Oh no, it doesn't happen like that. Bruce obviously doesn't die. JP makes his way back to
I have
the
a
manor.
question about that though. How didn't he die?
I don't know, but
And that
the-
you know, we said about that visual storytelling thing again, and that action thing. And don't get me wrong, like I've seen many a movie and many a TV show do this badly as well, which just kind of goes, oh yeah, but it's fine. They'll just forget, or they'll just accept that something happened and they didn't die. But you kind of you see him go to press a button, and then next panel explosion, and
so much
and
so
then
that Catwoman,
yeah.
who is by
Yeah.
the looks of it meant to be like a couple of city blocks away on a bridge in the sky, can see how big this explosion is. So it's not like
Yeah.
a little boom. This is a big fuck off.
And those who are even
Explosion.
closer can very much see that man went in car explode, man dead.
Yeah.
But then we find, you know, that's your cliffhanger, isn't it? And then we find he not dead. He went, oh yeah, I figured out there'd be someone in there. Meh, did you though? And how on earth did you get out of it? because there was no time to. But and I know that's nitpicking, but I just think that felt like some of the problems this had throughout of going, and some of my biggest problems. You have to listen to me which on about despising certain TV programs are going. No, that's just silly, and not silly as in ha ha silly. That's you couldn't even be bothered to figure out a way to
Yeah,
show this so that you could actually build that tension in a way that I'd buy into
all makes
when you
sense.
makes sense when you do the reveal and yeah, very problematic that part of the story for me, and not necessary. Like I didn't need to kind of go, oh, he's dead. Like you've broken his back already in this story. Like that was enough.
Yeah. So we go back to the manor, and Bruce finds his way into the Batcave through the hole that he fell through as a child.
Yes. I will say though, those touches were where I thought, do you know what? They've remembered Bat history. You
Yeah.
kind of go, that's a good touch. That to say, if he's going to get the mantle back, lean into some of those things that were there, that were established of how he got it in the first place. That I actually liked.
Yeah. They have a pretty shit fight. Where Bruce outsmarts him by making him put on ultraviolet light pieces so he can see better in the dark,
Yeah,
and then makes him follow him to where it's really sunny.
yeah. Although, and again, I don't want to give this too much of an out because how you described it is spot on. So I'm not gonna go. Oh, it's work of genius. But if I'm being super generous, and I think there is a degree where I think some generosity can be afforded here. I think if Bruce had just like out punched him, I think that suspension of disbelief to what he's come back from. I think that would have been a real struggle. But also all of this establishing stuff they've done that I didn't enjoy, of Jean Paul being really unhinged and sometimes that absolute thirst for what he thinks of a justice or the right way, did feel like it's something that could lead him to make really stupid decisions, and that's probably the way to beat him. But yeah, done really horribly and clunkily though.
Yeah. So that is the end of the official story, but we do have a couple of prologue issues where we see Catwoman
Yeah,
rescuing the bit that she needs that the guy dropped, only to find out that the surgeon that was doing it was in on it all the time,
the
which
bastard.
which is one of those where I believe this has got a bit more into it somewhere else. So, you know, for what we had as part of the Nightfall saga, it it missed why it's there, and we were
Don't trust
to us,
doctors. That's why it's there, Chris. Don't trust doctors.
but I'm going to say it's probably if you're reading the whole of the Catwoman run at that point, would make perfect sense and probably be a very good sort of little evil reveal.
Yeah.
But as always, Catwoman does good and manages to save her friend, and then we get a Robin issue where he goes off into a museum and takes
Yeah.
down crime, which was a little feel good end. I thought for that, just as the boy done good.
And picking up on those two aftermath issues, and I think we mentioned it. I certainly think I mentioned it on one of the other ones. As we go across the whole of Night Quest and Knightsend, so avoiding Nightfall. One thing I learned from these crossovers is I was much more and am much more interested in following the solo Robin run and the solo Catwoman run. They were some of the issues across the whole lot that I think had in some cases, some of the better art and some of the better writing. Although, like Chuck Dixon, who writes Robin, also writes part of and a large part of the Night Saga. But yeah, I really like them, and I do plan on at some point going back and reading those runs. I think probably there'll be later back crossovers that they get pulled into, and I think that's sometimes the trickiness of being the Robin series or the Catwoman series, you're
Yeah.
probably going to have your story interrupted. But the thing I liked about that Catwoman one is, even though her story is interrupted, they did seem to lace her story in. So it did have
Yeah.
that story about the Doctor in the ongoing, and a friend who's in a wheelchair who needs to be able to walk. And I always got the impression that part of that was, that promise was maybe because Catwoman had been somewhat impactful in like his loss of ability to. But yeah, I took from it of going, I think I might enjoy those runs quite a bit with the 90s glasses on, like I
Yeah.
think, you do have to embrace that it's 90s mainstream. So there might be some clunkiness there that you don't see as much these days.
So, what did you think of the end?
I mean, like, as we went through it there, I think like most of the things I said were not necessarily positive. I think there was a lot of sort of critiquing and critical there, but I did enjoy it much more in the middle. But nowhere near as good much as the beginning, and I think that's tantamount to the huge problem that this whole endeavor had. Is, I think, I feel like they were under pressure to try and encapsulate what DC were getting out of the death of Superman, and they
Yeah.
needed stroke wanted to do something with Batman. And by whatever means this idea of breaking the bat come up, and
And it was a good
Eve,
thing for because they were coming up to 500. They
yeah.
needed a tentpole moment.
And probably like the breaking the bat and the instigating of a new Batman. And we said, Dick Grayson's there, Tim Drake's there, but this was a time in comics where everything was getting a lot edgier, a lot darker, and the new character was a big thing. Like, sales of comics were going through the roof because it was a speculators market. So I imagine they saw the dollar signs of going, we could probably shift millions of copies of this because people want to buy it because it's the first time this person becomes Batman or whatever. So
Yeah.
that kind of all those pressures. But I do think in that they did manage, and not perfect, but they did manage to craft for that first part a really good story up to when they break the bat. We said, like, part of the length of it was really to hammer home that absolute war of attrition against Batman and his body, and how
Yeah.
much he was willing to sacrifice to do the right thing. And ultimately he made a huge sacrifice, and then it all went wrong for me. Like, it felt very directionless after that. And maybe the truth is, maybe it was directionless after that. Maybe they really didn't know. Maybe part of it was going to be based off how interested people were in Jean Paul and what the sales were. But they kind of had to fudge it a little bit until they found out how that was going to go down. And part of that fudging, I think, really did not. So you get that tail end of Nightfall where you start to see Jean Paul almost instantaneously start going over the edge. And then when you get into Night Saga, it's like they take a big step back because they kind of go, oh God, no, we want to do him going over the edge in this part of the story.
Yeah.
So let's pretend he didn't, and then start him going over the edge again. You go, I've seen all this. But yeah, the middle part did nothing but frustrate me, I think. I didn't feel like I was getting anything interesting with Jean Paul. I felt like the supporting cast, so Robin, Catwoman, etc., just felt like also rans in it. Sometimes seemed just like it, like kind of bit part idiots who were just
Yeah.
kind of standing around going, I don't think this guy's very good. Almost like they were waiting for Bruce to come back. And then you get the ridiculous Bruce coming back story, which you didn't get to read, and then Bruce comes back, and I think that did put some hope in it for me, because I went, okay, that's your end point, is Bruce becoming Batman again,
Yeah.
and so that brought us into this volume, and I looked at the run count of the issues, and I was pleased to see it was shorter. But one of my worries for it is going, you are bringing someone back from a broken back who is in a bad place, against someone you've established as an uber psychotic, very well trained killer.
Yeah.
You've not given yourselves many issues to do that with, and it's not horrible, but I some of the steps they took to get to that point concern me. And I'll always go back to, and you've said it a number of times, I've said it a number of times, pacing of this. Once you get outside of the breaking of the bat, the pacing of this is all over the place, and some of those story elements that really needed a lot more issues to breathe and push on were rushed, whilst it feeling like it's taken a bloody eternity.
Yeah. Obviously, I know we absolutely obliterated book 2 when we did that review, and the only redeeming thing for me in that was that 3-issue Joker run where Joker
You
was
could
going
almost
all
forget
Hollywood.
it was. You could almost forget it was in the middle of that story, couldn't you? It
Yeah.
felt like an outlier rather than the standard that we've seen throughout.
But it's the thing, it's like after him beating Bane, Jean Paul really doesn't do anything other than fight himself
Yeah,
and his inner battle with St. Demas. And I'm just like, but nothing happens in that. There's no,
A-
there's, it's
and
not like
everything
there's
else
a
came so
payoff.
easy, didn't it? Every
Yeah.
other peril he beat relatively easy, and yeah, as you say, the only fight was with himself. So you kind of established him. I'd describe him as you almost established him like a bloody Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees level of he'll just do everyone. Like no
Yeah.
one's going to stop him. Which I know he had to be a big bad ultimately for Bruce to have that heroic moment. But I think if he'd just shown him as a Batman with an internal conflict, and then over the course of those what felt like 3 million issues, you start to see his grip on sanity. Like I'd have
Yeah.
much rather
Or
have seen it like
he'd
when we
go-
turn the corner. Sorry.
done something like he'd go, he starts with just beating the shit out of people, but they don't
Yeah.
die. And then, 6, 7, 8 villains down the road, he goes that little bit too far and accidentally kills one.
Ooh, and
And
that
then he gets the
relationship.
taste for it. And then that. But
And,
is
and that relationship with Robin, like I'd have bought into it much more if maybe Robin had been along for the ride. But
Yeah.
as time went on, you could see that that Jean Paul was becoming less enamored with the idea of having someone along for the ride because maybe he wasn't quite philosophically the same. I did buy into his instantaneous distrust of Catwoman because on paper Catwoman is a villain, so I kind of got
Yeah.
that. But yeah, they jettisoned like the supporting cast instantaneously. So actually, for most issues, all you had to focus on was Jean Paul, and all Jean Paul had was, "Oh, I'm a bad guy. I'm gonna kill everyone." Or sorry, I'm a bad guy. I want to stop bad guys, and I'll go to any lengths. And do you know what? That's not interesting enough to sustain
Yep.
the amount of story and the amount of pages he had. So yeah, just I think some real kind of unfortunately basic errors that really impacted the story. And yeah, as I say, if like you said there, 8 villains down the line, you're starting to maybe each confrontation him. So as you saw in Night Quest, where Batman got more and more broken physically,
Yeah.
Night Saga could have been Jean Paul getting more and more broken mentally.
And,
And
pushing it further each time.
yeah. And I think maybe maybe in their head that's what they thought they were doing, but it really didn't come across like that. He was broken mentally within 3.5 seconds of being Batman, wasn't he? And then it was just
Yeah.
a fluctuation in internal argument where, yeah, I think that slow and steady descent that I think you could have then had. One of my big issues with it is Bruce Wayne and Batman, I know the same thing, but they don't make mistakes very often.
No.
And this was a massive mistake, like an uncharacteristic mistake. And potentially you could argue, yeah, he was broken physically and mentally at that point, but it didn't feel like that was the root cause of this mistake. It felt like he'd thought of this beforehand. It's kind of in the back of his head of going, well, if I do go, Dick's not going to take it on, so it's going to be this dude.
Yeah.
And I just never really bought that he got it that wrong. Whereas if you'd have seen that slow paced descent, I think Bruce coming back to take his mantle back because he'd had such high hopes for this guy and such faith, and it was the events that led it to go wrong. I think I'd have been much more convinced of it, and I think I'd have felt a lot more passionate about it when they actually did see. It would be like the father who passes down to his son, and ultimately his son disappoints him. And I think that on
Yeah.
paper is a classic and a good story, but that just doesn't come out here.
No. Obviously, with the final book, for me, I like the ninja bit. I like the training. I would have had it in the other. I'd have had it in book two, so we came back.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
have the last fight on this. So the
You know
bit
that
where he does the kill but doesn't kill bit as like one issue in here, but like running concurrently with what happened during the last book
so
at the
so
end.
I think I either end Night Saga with Jean Paul doing The Unforgivable, and then Night's End being predominantly about Bruce coming back, or like you say there, maybe Jean Paul with 5 or 6 issues to go in Saga starts to really go over a line, and then yes, you get the Bruce, you get this first part of Bruce coming back, but beforehand, and potentially then when you actually get into Night's End, you could still stave off the final confrontation to make it a 12 issue story by having Bruce kind of being back and maybe him going against some villains. Like
Just
almost that final
as
part of my training is to
right,
go
yeah,
against go against some of the old ones. While as a juxtaposition, maybe having Jean Paul going against some of the more traditional Batman villains and seeing how each of them deal with it, and potentially I think you show Jean Paul deal with it easier, like more violently but easier, so that again when you get to that end fight, maybe you're a little bit more going, oh, like this is quite the mismatch here.
yeah,
And the set piece that they did, it felt very action movie, but it's not what I really wanted as my set piece for a Batman fight. I wanted that, should have been in, and I know ultimately they do end up in the Batcave,
yeah.
but that kind of high rise fight, helicopters, guns, everyone watching on, it doesn't feel very Batman-y to me. It
No,
feels Superman-y to me more than anything else, and
or Avengers.
yeah, yeah,
It smells more of a Marvel team thing, or Hulk, or
yeah.
as you say, Superman, like a more OTT,
Yeah.
colourful comic book
Yeah, these
superhero
guys should have
thing.
been
Not,
fighting on the docks or in a warehouse, shouldn't they? Now you can
yeah,
make it like quite a flash docks or warehouse and make it a good reason in there, and maybe put some perilous things within that can cause your explosions and things like that. But yeah, just felt off kilter with how I'd expect that confrontation to go down.
yeah. Um, and then yeah, the as I said when we were going through what happens, sunshine.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just like, I get it. Bruce is a really clever, guy, and will use elements to help him. But fuck me, that was a damp squib of a fucking ending.
I mean, I'd have psychologically attacked him with the fact that he'd failed his religious masters and stuff like that. But I'm a callous bastard, so that's why I'd have gone down that
Mm.
road. I'd have tried to drive him into like a mentally incapacitated at that point.
And it's the thing, obviously, I didn't mention it when we went through it, but like after he takes him out of the sun, and he's like, "Yes, you fucked up, but you go be good somewhere."
You go do you, yeah.
And I'm just like, no, this guy's a cunt. He has tarnished the Batman name. He's killed people, and Bruce is like, there, off you go.
Yeah, I felt like he should have ended it. Oh, sorry, like the end point of that should have been. I do sympathise with you because I've also worn this suit and I know the temptations and I know the bad things you see. However, you did cross a line and that line is unforgivable. So now you have to do penance, and that penance probably being Arkham.
Yeah, but just nothing. And
Yeah.
that's why I didn't mention it in the thing, because it literally does nothing.
I,
And
I
it just,
presume
it's
that
a,
gets spinned out into probably a solo series, is probably the
yeah.
honest truth. Yeah.
But to me, that sums up everything post Bane breaking Batman.
Yeah.
It ultimately leads to nothing.
Well, I think I said it earlier. I think sometimes these things are born out of money-making initiatives rather than the desire to tell a great story. And I think that may be the ultimate truth of this, of going, like, we know that the industry is going massive at the moment. Death of Superman made the news. Let's do something with Batman. I'm actually interested, and we'll pick up later about there's a Green Lantern story around this time as well, which touches into these worlds. But uh, and then post that going, well, let's make our super cool dark armored bad guy, and post that, let's then spin them out into their own solo series. Those seem to be the real reasons for doing this story, not they wanted to tell a story. Now, I think probably a lot of comics is driven by that. I'm not so naive to kind of go, oh no, everything's high art and everyone's just telling the
Yeah.
story they want to tell. But at this period of time, I think that was much more of a driver, and the story suffered for it. And I look at some of the writers on here, like the Alan Grants, Chuck Dixons, and I know they've done good written comics. God, that was a terrible sentence. Well written comics. I think they've probably had some badly written comics along the way as well. But I can't help but feel like, and we said about the artists, I can't help but feel like all of the creatives on this were not at 100%, and I imagine that's probably because there was a lot of editorial pressure to just kind of go, right, we need this. I mean, go back to the bloody Bat Train.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was someone going, oh, that could be some merch. We could do the Bat Train as a toy at some point, and yeah, I phoning it in to a large point is what it felt like. But I think it's probably a bit more egregious than that. I think they were probably being told, write this story, then being told, oh, actually, do you know what, we need another 10 issues because the sales are going well, or now we need to wrap it up quickly because the sales aren't so good, or we want to cash in on, well, the Azrael character has still got some cachet, we want to get a solo series out for him, so wrap it up in 3 issues, will you? And
Yeah.
it, without looking into the history specifically about this, that's what it felt like to me all the way through. A lot of at least competent to good creators being kind of forced into, and as I say, we saw how good they could be at the beginning of this when they were probably allowed to craft that story themselves and tell it the way they wanted to,
Yeah.
being put under pressures to do it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it is one of the things that I've read that I've not seen the level drop as much in anything else as quickly as it did with this. We have seen stuff where there is times when you get a couple of dud issues, or it will have a story beat or something there that just doesn't work, doesn't connect. But it's that sort of thing. Why they were trying to do it, but it just fell on its ass.
Yeah.
This goes from fuck me. This is perfectly way of showing how Batman, after weeks of fighting every villain every night, can be beaten, is human. To his bat metal, look, he looks a bit like Spawn and everything else that we're doing at this point.
Yeah.
It's like edgy and hardcore, and look, and let him be violent because violence is in. And
The anti-hero is everything right now.
yeah, and it as you say, it does stink of story by commission and committee. It's we need to have this, and this. Go do it. Hit these story beats.
I've avoided using a lot of the creators' names through this. We did it more in the first one, but mainly because I think it's unfair to use some of their names in this, because I think I'd be far more critical on them than they probably deserve. But I was going to say, let's do a little exercise here. So the whole saga as a job lot. What's the couple of worst parts of it for you? Like 2 or 3, like, but the real standout like problems you had with it as a story as a whole.
Azrael going nowhere is a big problem for me, and just that middle section of 20 issues of nothing actually happening.
I mean, for me, it's the pacing of it, and one of the things I cannot divorce myself from thinking that this should have really been the advert for "this isn't going to go well" is the design of Azrael's batsuit. I mean, it is just even 90s levels. It is horrific, and I think that tells me everything I need to know about what they were trying to achieve here, rather than having any fantastic intent to do something great. But by the same token, best bits, the best bits across the saga for you.
The building or the breaking of the bat, that whole thing, and as I said, that 3 issue Joker run where Joker went all Hollywood, and it stinks of like 1940s Hollywood exuberance, where he had the stage with the keyboard
Yeah.
that he was walking.
It was a real nice stylistic change, wasn't
yeah,
it? Yeah,
and it was that thing. It was like there was a character that I love anyway, but being used in a different way to everything else that's going on. So it seemed, and it sort of dragged JP into that more than the stink of JP being put on
Yeah.
the character. And I will say, like, bonus props to Catwoman and Robin in this as well, because as you said, especially the sort of back end of book 2 and into the book 3, and especially with the last 2 issues, I'm more interested in them
yeah,
than I ever am with fucking Azrael.
yeah. Yep, they felt like they were having, like, in their own series, they felt like they were having stories where they were supporting casts and characters they wanted to get to know, and they're interacting with people. Yeah, that, I mean, once we get outside of the first 3 quarters of Knight's Quest, or up to Breaking the Back, that's the only real highlight for me. Is that, like, driving my interest. Like you, my favourite bits are up to Breaking the Back. I think it's really, really well crafted. And amongst that, there's some great moments with well-established villains. The Firestorm bit, I will say, was the damp squib of that element. But for the damp squib of that,
We got Mad Hatter and we
I got Mad Hatter and Ventriloquist.
Ventriloquist.
Yeah, and I thought that their parts of the story were so well handled for what I think, again, a lot of creators would have used as more of the jobbers, the villains of the week, throwaway ones. Whereas I think they felt very sinister, very important, and very well fleshed out. You know, like coming to the end of this, I feel like Ventriloquist is a much more fleshed out character than John Paul is. In the same way
Yeah.
you said that about Catwoman and Robin, and probably one of the biggest highlights for me is Bane. You know, Bane is now known as one of the Batman villains. You know, like, been used in 2 movies. Probably the best less said about one of those movie renditions of him, the better. But even in Batman comics, I know, like, used quite a lot in Tom King's run recently. But Bane now for me is, and I know he was introduced before this, but this for me is what establishes him in that Batman pantheon, and I would put him in the big named Batman villains now. And I think, you know, that's testament to what they did here with him. And bearing in mind, a lot of that was probably just for that breaking the back moment. Doomsday in the Superman side, the character that kills is Superman, spoilers. I don't feel like, and I know he is used in movies, but I don't feel like he's got anywhere near the kind of fleshed out. He was just a vehicle. He was a rage machine to kill Superman, whereas this person who was established to break the Bat's back not only was physically dominating, but also a mastermind criminal. And you saw, like, his weaknesses, as in, you know, over reliance sometimes on taking venom, etc., etc., etc.
And
Felt like a really fleshed out villain to me.
and also you got a character being built in that very first couple of issues when you see him
Yeah,
in the prison as a child, and
Yeah.
you know the conflict, and you know his reasons,
Yeah.
why he does what he does. Which, you know, that is the thing with, as you say, Bane is made here, and you know he's not like god tier Batman villains, but he is in that high excellence.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
because of this.
he's kind of not in your top 5, 6, is he? But he's not a million miles outside of that. I mean, this story I think added some real key moments to the Batman mythos. Yeah, say Bane, the breaking of the bat, and I think some of the establishment of some of the GCPD officers that were done in that first part were a payoff later on and are fantastic. I think it treats the villains very well at first, but for everything it added to the Bat mythos, I think it also, unfortunately, later on subtracts some stuff from the Bat mythos. You know, I would love to live in a world where if someone says Batman to me, you know, like lots of images will come into my head, but one
Yeah.
of those images will be John Paul in that armor, and I'll go, "Ooh."
Bat metal.
Yeah, 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 and you know, like I said it a minute ago. So they did the Death of Superman, and they did this, and uh, DC in general were just kind of going, "This is the way to do things." And there's a Green Lantern story, Emerald Twilight, well, Emerald Dawn into Emerald Twilight that runs in parallel to Death of Superman, but ain't the same sort of time of this. And from what I can gather, basically most of the DC editorials were saying, "Look, it's time, kids. You do something massive. You do something that is absolutely devastating for characters that they love, or is absolutely game changing for the universe."
Yeah.
And in that one, they turn Hal Jordan evil. And there was a lot of this sort of stuff going on. I would say that this and the Emerald Twilight, this is where it seems to be that maybe not so much in sales, but where the audience started to turn against some of this stuff. You know, suddenly they were kind of going, yeah, okay, the Death of Superman was quite wow, but
Now you're
we do
forcing
kind
it.
of we do like these characters, and we didn't necessarily want them all to be damaged and destroyed and thrown away. And it doesn't reach out much further than that. I mean, I'm sure in some of the other series there are some dramatic things done, but then I say that I don't think we'll ever do it, and I hope we never do. But Marvel's doing some of this at the same time as well. Like for as gross and as horrible as this Bat metal armor is, there's a little run there where they give Daredevil metal armor, and you think this looks horrible.
Oh,
Be
the
prepared for that.
90s.
Yeah, yeah, and you know that is the thing. Contextually, you have to kind of accept that there's a bit of 90s excess in there, and trying to cash in. I would, I don't know about you, but I would really recommend to Batman fans reading up to the breaking of the bat. I think that's a really good Batman story, but I would then say stop there, fast forward however many issues it was, and pick it back up the next time you see Batman on a front cover looking like Batman that hasn't got some horrible armored dude on there with him.
Yeah. I said is that first 3/4 of this whole thing is great.
Yeah.
That first part where they break Batman is beautifully storytelling,
God,
perfectly
it
paced.
it feels like about 100 years ago that we read it, but like even that starting point of it where they blow up the prison, don't they? They blow
Yeah.
up to let the villains out, and you just go something that it's been done a lot since, and probably quite common now, but that was great for the day, wasn't it? It was just like, yeah, all of these absolute bastards that have had their own individual stories that Batman's primarily just had to focus on them singularly to get in there. They're all out there now, and yeah, a great setup, and I'd say a great ending. Except for that was always that was never going to be the ending. I mean, unless you kill Bruce there, that was always
Yeah.
going to be the end of part one, let's say. But part 2 and 3,
Yeah. But yeah, I concur with you. It's that read up to Bruce being broken and then come back a year later once this is all gone and everything's back to normal and
yeah.
Bruce is still Batman and we don't speak of Azrael. We
I'm a
don't
bit
speak of
burnt.
Jean Paul.
I'm a bit burnt out on it after this. As I say, I'd be interested to read some Robin and some Catwoman from around this time. I didn't really have the temptation to jump in and carry on to see what happened next for Bruce. I was kind of like, I can quite happily skip 2 years of publication, but I do wonder. I'm saying that now that we've talked about it, because it's a good month and a half since I finished Knightsend, so the bitter
Yeah.
taste is out of my mouth probably a little bit more than it is yours. I am kind of tempted to see what did happen next, as in, did they go straight back into kind of establishing Bruce as was? So, do you get a Riddler story, a Two-Face story, a Joker story? Do
Yeah.
they almost kind of carry on as if nothing happened, or do they carry on going? He's still on his way back. He's not quite the Bruce he was. I don't know, and maybe one day in that ever expanding list of comics, I will add some of the post this story issues in.
Yeah, it's one of those of I never want to see Azrael in anything ever again. That's what this has left my taste with. Is like you could come out and tell me that there is an amazing Azrael storyline, a 12 issue run that's award winning and perfect, and I will not touch it because I
So if
fucking hate him.
if anyone wants to torment Chris, pile into the comments and say that you really want us to cover the next Azrael story as our next big read. I think I'd feel quite punished on that as well, but I'd take it just to see your face.
Yeah, I never want to see Azrael in any shape or form, or Jean Paul Gallet in any shape or form ever again after this.
I have actually seen him in a couple of things. I say seen him. I've read a couple of things where he's been in there, but he's been very much not this. And it's stuff that's written close to sort of 15 to 20 years later. So the stench is off it a little bit at that point. But yeah, I'm not queuing up for the Azrael solo series.
Yes. So that will bring the end to year one saga. But as we said last week, we will let you throw in some suggestions for what is big read for year two.
Yeah.
Obviously, Sandman will continue. We will
Oh
come
yeah,
back
yeah.
with more
We're
Sandman.
doing that, and it's kit and a whole kit and caboodle, aren't we?
Yeah, but anything that is of this sort of length, there's like maybe free trades or
Or gravitas, maybe, even if
or
it doesn't hit 3 trades. Like
or something that
significant
has
to a character.
some massive tent poles, oh my god moments
Yeah.
down there in the comments.
And
As
we'll put something on the Twitter as well about it. I'll start to put some stuff out on the Twitter to try and do that. And I've started to tinker with YouTube polls, so I'll do something with that as well. But yeah, we've got a few things kind of on the radar, and I think after this, we need a teensy break. So we'll give people a bit of time to give some feedback on what they may or may not like to see next.
yes, and as always, like, subscribe, ring the bell. We are at 500 subscribers at the
500.
time of recording.
Blimmin' Arnold.
So, thank you all.
By the time we finish the next saga, God knows what that'll be at.
But as always, thank you for watching any of the content this year.
Yes.
We will continue. We will carry
We
on.
bloody will. Until he gets bored of hearing my voice, we'll continue.
So as we said, it doesn't even have to be for the big reads, but any short reads, anything that you would like to see us cover down there. We have.
As I said earlier, if anyone wants to pick the 47 issue long Azrael solo series that starts just after this story, then chuck it in.
I will find where you live, and I will go full Azrael.
Do you want some good news about it as well? It's also a writer and at least one of the artists from this run as well. So you know what to do, kids. You know what to do.
But before the torment comes in, it is time to say goodbye for this week, and until next week, goodbye.